Hello and welcome to Last Call with Kristin. I'm Kristin Fuller. I'm a recovery coach and I'm also an emotional healing coach. I help people unchain from trauma, grief, and addiction. With that being said, I created Last Call as a community where people can come and ask hard questions and get real answers rooted in science, based in research. We're the real deal. And I have a degree in psychology. I am also a trauma-informed coach. I also have a membership in NADAC, which is a world-renowned addiction expert place where people can know that who they're dealing with knows what they're talking about. That being said, I'm also a person in recovery. I'm almost 2 years sober. So when I tell you that I walk the walk, I do. I'm right there with you. Today, we have a topic that also has a lot of stigma to it. If you're a listener of this podcast, you know that everything we talk about on here has a stigma around it, whether it's mental health, addiction, trauma, sexuality, all of these things that kind of people sweep under the rug because of stigma. We bring them out. We put them on the table here. And suicide is one that can't go without being mentioned. So that being said, now that you know what the scope of this episode is, if talk about suicide or suicidal ideation triggers you in any way, shape, or form, please proceed with caution. And please keep in mind that there will be talk, some of my own personal experiences, as well as people that I've interviewed in order to bring this podcast to you. I also decided to do this episode live. I feel like when we're talking about something as serious as suicide, you deserve to see my expressions and you deserve to see how suicide and suicidal ideation has affected my life. And there doesn't need to be a screen in front of me. If I show emotion, it's because this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. So, with all the trigger warnings out of the way, if you are staying with me, thank you. And thank you, even if you have to check out. I honor you. This has to be a safe space for every listener or future listener that I have. So I honor you either way. When I heard the news today about who we know and love in the United States, all over the world, really, as a man named Twitch, who was the DJ on the Ellen Show. He was the winner of So You Think You Can Dance. My kids and I watched him way back then when he was just a street dancer, just a kid. And never would he have imagined in his wildest dreams that he would win a world-renowned dance competition and become this man that we all came to know and love, full of so much love and light in his heart and just shining out of him. So to hear that he took his life and succumbed to suicide yesterday really broke a lot of hearts this morning. And that's why I felt called to do this episode today, because I haven't suffered from suicide attempts per se. However, there were points at the end of my addiction 2 years ago, actually this exact time 2 years ago, I'd say the last month of the year, so all of December 2020, I was so reckless with my life on a daily basis, taking 20, 30 milligrams of Ambien, taking Ativan, drinking 3 or 4 bottles of wine nightly. And not with the intent to unalive myself. Also, not with the intent to live another day in my life. I had PTSD from severe sexual trauma that had occurred in several different points in my life. I was in the middle of a divorce. I was struggling with my sexuality, trying to wonder, where do I fit in? And I was also completely held down by my addiction to alcohol and pills and stimulants. And being so immersed in copious amounts of alcohol had me thinking with a lens that was so self-destructive. Again, another trigger warning, just to be on the safe side. Your safety is of utmost importance to me. So before I make this statement, I haven't spoken about this, and I feel like I'm doing a disservice by not sharing another time that I was close to not being here. And it was still December 2020, around that same month. I collect crystals, and I have one that's kind of pyramid shaped, so it's pointy on the edge. And I was in so much emotional and physical pain from my PTSD symptoms. I had fibroids in my uterus. I had physical pain in my reproductive organs that were a result of the sexual trauma that I endured 10 years ago, almost 11 years ago now. And my sexuality was completely cut off at the arm, along with a lot of other things that were going on that I'm just not ready to verbalize yet, but you get the gist. And I remember going to bed with this crystal in my hand. And I remember pressing it on my wrist, not cutting, not damaging my skin in any way, but just seeing what it felt like. Then I did it on my thigh, where my femoral artery would be. And I remember thinking, I don't want to die. And I don't want to live. And how long can I exist like this? Thankfully, the Ambien kicked in. I dropped the crystal on the ground. I fell asleep. And I woke up. And a couple of weeks later was Christmas night, when I repeated my reckless behavior with Ambien and alcohol. And this time, I thought, what would 40 milligrams do? Again, I don't want to unalive myself, yet I can't imagine waking up in the world that I'm in right now either. I woke up, and that was the day I changed the rest of my life. December 26th, going on almost 2 years. So I know what it feels like to be contemplating suicidal ideation. I call that, or it's called in the recovery community, unaliving yourself by installment plan. That means you know that alcohol or substances are ruining your body, and maybe you have health consequences. And certainly at this point, there were relationship consequences, and my kids had pretty much lost their mom for the most part at this point. And the only thing that kept me from being 5150'd or entered into a hospital was that I didn't have a plan, and I wasn't threatening to unalive myself. Well, if you back up a few years, this same girl who did this worked for the crisis text line, volunteered for the Trevor Project, gave presentations to schools and kids about what to do if someone's contemplating suicide. I had all of the knowledge, yet in that split moment, the knowledge almost doesn't apply. So now that you know my experience personally, I want to tell you that when I began this podcast this morning, I did a lot of research because it's been 2 years since I've been in that space. I have a best friend who's a therapist, Joree Rose, and I asked if I can use some of her words that she shared about how to give comfort to those of us that are kind of reeling right now. And everything she said was very impactful to me. One thing that really stuck out was she said Twitch wasn't just a guy on TV. He wasn't just someone we see on social media. He was part of our family night. He was part of, for the dance community, he was the king of the dance community and theater. And America loves him and his wife and his family. And that it's okay if we're experiencing strong emotions that have to do with, I don't get it. He's just a celebrity. Why am I feeling so strongly? Because he's not just a celebrity. In the same way that Robin Williams, for example, was not just a celebrity. He was part of our lives. He was interwoven throughout my entire childhood. It was a big deal. And this is a big deal. So don't judge your feelings. They don't need to be judged. If you need to cry about this, cry about it. It's okay. No judgment. It's a big deal. Second, she said, if your kids are struggling, or friends of yours are struggling, or if you're a dance teacher and your students are struggling today, give them a soft space to land. Put your hands under them and listen to them. Maybe they just have to cry. Maybe they just need to get out some grief. Or maybe, and this is great, they have awesome memories to share. I remember when we met Twitch at that dance competition. That's super helpful when we're grieving. She said, listen without judgment. And I'm going to add on to that. Listen to yourself without judgment. We don't need to judge feelings. They're giving us information. Feelings and emotion are information. They are what help us define the next steps to take or not to take. They don't deserve judgment. And there's no hierarchy on feelings. If you're crying, it doesn't mean you're more sad than the person next to you that maybe hasn't shed tears. Or if you're angry, that is a normal emotion that comes with grief, and that's allowed too. Or maybe you're happy in a way because you got to meet Twitch, or because your students just adored him and loved him, and you're so happy for the memories that you have, and that's good too. All of them, without judgment. Listen and hold space. The second person I spoke to was another dear friend, and she has suffered from suicidal ideation and has lived, thankfully, through several attempts. So I asked her, grab my notes. I asked her to please give me some ideas that will help someone if they're in a situation where their best friend or a kid at school or your own child or a parent or someone you work with says to you, I've been having these feelings. I'm considering hurting myself. Or I don't want to be here anymore. She said it's so important that you take them seriously, because if they trust you enough to divulge the most painful, the word she used, indescribable pain that a human can be in order to have these thoughts and contemplations, then they are trusting you. And because there's a stigma around suicide, I'm new to YouTube. I'm curious if this will be bleeped out, or, I mean, I'm not going to worry about that right now, but just curious how this will turn out. I can't not say the word. It's part of the conversation. So what happens, happens. I'm doing my job of getting this information out here. Back to the person. They are trusting you with their indescribable pain. And when they trust you in that moment, it is not the time. I'm going to repeat, it is not the time to use shame. For example, your mom would be so hurt if you did that. Or I can't fathom what your husband would do if you took your life. Not the time or place. So we're going to remove shame. We're going to inject empathy, compassion. I hear you loud and clear. I had no idea you were hurting so bad. How can I support you? That question is imperative. Sometimes someone in that deep and dark of a place won't have an answer for you. And sometimes it can be as simple as, I see you. I know you're struggling. In my case, 2 years ago, I was so lonely. I have a mom and a dad and siblings that I could have called. But in my room at 3 a.m., under the influence of several substances, I felt alone. And no one could have known that. However, here's what I know now. You're never alone. You are never alone. If you follow me, if you watch my show, if you know me, I am a DM or a text away. I will always be here to support anybody in my community or friend or loved one. Always. Additionally, I'm going to put all of these in the show notes, but there's the crisis text line. They are there not just for suicide prevention, they're there to help you in any dire situation. Maybe you're not suicidal. Maybe your little brother is. You need help for him. Maybe it's not suicide at all. Maybe you feel like you're being verbally abused and manipulated and you need help. Crisis text line are trained to help walk you through those. I used to work for them. I know their training and how rigorous it is. It's the real deal. And it's free. If you're in the LGBTQ community, the Trevor Project, I used to work for them as well. They are highly skilled volunteers who are just the fiercest allies and members of the gay community. And they know what some of these feelings feel like. They know what it feels like to be shunned or to be silenced or to not be accepted. And all of that training makes them incredibly valuable members of society that are volunteering 3 hours in the middle of the night, all through 24/7, but my shift was 12 to 3. Being a former bartender, it just made sense. So it goes without saying that these people aren't there because they have to be. They're there because they want to be, and they want to help you. And again, Trevor Project is not just suicide prevention. It is for helping get out of a sticky situation, or if there's abuse going on, or if there's a boundary that needs to be drawn. Then there's also the National Suicide Prevention text line. All three of these will be linked down below. I want you to do me a favor and copy and paste these on your Facebook status, on your Instagram, on your TikTok, and just copy and paste the numbers and the websites to these services. God forbid you're in the situation where you or someone you love needs to use one of these numbers. At least they're there. At least they're there. That's all I ask. Okay. So resources are so important. Helping your friend or loved one or yourself with resources. And keep in mind, there's a lot to be desired in the mental health world in the US. I'll be the first one to admit it. However, if you are in the midst of ideations and thoughts, it is helpful for most people to have someone show them the ropes or tell them your story. For me, when I was told you have to get help or you're going to lose your children, I then asked their dad, who I trusted, help me find where to go. I was so lost. I didn't know where to even begin. At this point, I'd survived the night after my reckless BS behavior. Oh, see, I just did it. I just did what I tell everybody not to do, and that is shame the person. So watch me reframe this in real time. So mad at myself. I'm going to reframe that. I was at such a low level that I didn't know how to get help with mental health and addiction treatment. So someone had to kind of show me the ropes until I could pick my head up out of the water and make the call and begin rehab and therapy. So it's okay to say, I don't know where to start. And as the friend or family member, you can say, start right here. Let's start here. And then the other thing she said that's so important, be there for them. Be there for them. They feel alone. They feel isolated. Be there for them. Even if they say, I'm fine. That was last night. I'm fine. Today's a new day. Be there for them. Check in with them. Plan things with them. See how they're doing. Ask questions. Some people are afraid to ask people that have admitted to suicidal ideation, are you still considering hurting yourself? They're afraid that by saying that, they're putting ideas in their head. And what we know now, after years of research in psychology and counseling, that they're already having thoughts in their head. We're not planting anything by asking them that. It's an important question to know. This question is what helps you discern, I need to call 911 and get help for this person. Or they're just talking about it. They're in the contemplation stage. I'm going to stick real close to them. So there's a difference. At the end of all of this information, I'm going to cry again. I can't help it. I want to reiterate that no matter how alone you feel, no matter what you've gone through and what's been done to you, no matter how much you feel like it won't matter if you're not here, it will. You matter. I matter. I'm so grateful to be here today. I am so honored that I got to wake up that morning and change my life. Not everybody gets to. And if you are breathing and you are here, you deserve to heal. So, gonna dry off, gonna put one foot in front of the other, and we're gonna put our arms around each other. And we're gonna keep our arms around each other. This doesn't just go on for a couple days while we're mourning what happened. We need to keep our arms around each other, especially in the recovery community, in the LGBTQ community. Suicide is the 10th cause of death in the US. 10th. That's really high. That's really high. We have to keep our arms around each other and keep in touch with our loved ones and move forward with the knowledge of I'm not alone. I can reach out to Coach Kristin. I have the Trevor Project. I have Smart Recovery. I have Crisis Text Line. They're all there for you. And you, beautiful human, are worthy. I love all of you who listen and watch. And I honor every one of you with all my heart. Bye for now.